Whenever we talk about Egypt, we have to talk about many of the important sites where we can learn more about Egypt and more about history. Well, usually whenever people talk about history in Egypt, they go back in age and they talk about ancient history. But it is very, very important to learn also more about modern Egypt and more about different ages in general. It is not all about the, temples, monuments, pyramids. No, we have many other places to visit, especially when it comes to these places like museums. But again, not only museums. In Egypt, you have many palaces and houses. And these houses are not less important than museums and palaces, because these houses will tell you more about people during different eras, how did they live, and more about the lifestyle at that time, and especially if those people played a role in Egyptian history. So this time actually we have some of these houses we would like to move into, and let me tell you that here in the area we have many beautiful sites to stop at. So if I'm talking about this area in particular, it is very famous, and also I will tell you more about it later. But also talking about one of the beautiful houses, it is one of my favorite houses, that is Sahimi house. Let's find out more about it right after this.
Al Muaizza Street is one of the best locations, highly recommended to anyone who is interested to learn more about Egypt's history. It witnessed different periods of time, each of which left its mark on one of these buildings located on both sides of the street, and each one reflects a different style of architecture. It is quite clear that Egypt is famous in particular for the diversity and multitude of its Islamic monuments, which were built through different eras. The buildings of Islamic monuments in Egypt has started since the Muslims first opened Egypt in 641 AD. From this point on, Egypt has been ruled by many Islamic dynasties, starting with the Rashidun Caliphs, the Ptolemies, the Fatimids, Ayyubids, the Mamluks, and the Ottomans, ending with rulers from the family of Muhammad Ali.
Well, we are in Darb al-Asfar, which is a narrow street that's joined from Muaizza Street to Al-Gamaliya Street. We have a famous three medieval houses, dates back from the time of the Ottomans. The first one by the street is called Mustafa Gafar, and he was a coffee trader. The second one is called the Kharazati, and he was making like local jewelry, while the third one, which is the most famous, called Sahimi. And Sahimi is have a long history because it's the biggest, built on 2,000 square meter house formed of Salamlek and Haramlek, and it's recently renovated with a nice architectural elements that was nicely maintained from the time of building the house. Moreover, like in Sahimi, there is a little museum for the luster painting ceramics and some glass works, which is so famous. It's the second nice collection after the Islamic Museum that locates in downtown.
When we talk about places to visit in Egypt, usually when I say visiting important sites, I always say this is not only limited to palaces. There are other houses, and these houses are very important, especially that many of these houses, when you enter, you have it the same as it was during the period of the owner. That when you go inside, you can see his belongings, all his daily tools, and you can feel the time inside.
That's true, because it's open now as museum, so it's a great chance for the people and the tourists just to come and to take a little glimpse of what was in this houses. Like in Sahimi, when people just go inside, they can experience how people used to live inside. As we just mentioned, that there is a Salamlek and the Haramlek. The Haramlek is very special because it's a place of the women, and it's typical Ottoman houses. Like when we go inside, we can just see part of the furniture and the original pavement. And the fountains inside. There is a rooms that was used to be for the dining and also for reading the Quran. There is a rooms for smoking the water pipe and also for the music during the holidays. Like when we go to the second story, we can just see from outside these wooden balconies that's known as mashrabiyas. It's better to known as mashrafiyas because it was like make some people confused about the name because it's known as mashrafiya, not mashrabiya. The mashrabiya is a place where they used to put their water jugs inside, while the mashrafiya is a balcony where the women can see the street without being seen inside. And because most of the shops of their husbands locates next to their houses, they just can see them from the little mashrafiyas how they do act with other women during the day. And this is not a joke.
Monitoring. So talking about this era and talking about the design itself, what we have noticed about the house, also the space, the design, the selection of each of these rooms is not just like this. I mean, just as you mentioned, you have some areas during summertime, during winter time, place. There were no, of course, ACs at that time, but they were keen to just to decide according to their own, to the science in general. I mean, to select and to work and to build their houses.
Exactly. When you just go inside one of these houses, especially the second floor, there is something that was opened into the ceiling called the malkaf, and the malkaf is like a local air condition. Like it received the wind from the north side, and it's make the place inside much cooler, and it's built like away from the sun rays. And at this point it let the rays of the sun to get in without feeling any temperature inside this rooms, and this is how they built it properly.
What about the furniture inside? I mean, are they all brought from a certain place, or it was just according to the choices that?
Well, it depends on the social standard of the people who build the house. If they can afford having like a luxurious furniture, we can see like examples of chairs and tables nicely inlaid with ivory and ebony and nicely decorated with mother of pearl as well. So we have some of this furniture being kept now at the moment in the Islamic Museum. So it depends on the social standard.
What about the Sahimi from inside?
Sahimi is one of the most beautiful houses. I know that there is a lot of houses in Cairo especially, and many places in this Islamic quarter and other old places as well, but not like Sahimi, because Sahimi is considered to be the biggest because it's, as we just said, 2,000 square meter house, and it's built on an old Fatimid altar. and it's being like inhabited by many people, many generations, passed from one generation to another. Probably the owner was a famous trader, one of the high officials as well during the time of the Ottomans. They enjoyed a bigger influence, and they also like renovated the house during their time. We can see a lot of architectural elements being introduced inside this house. One of the main conditions of building a house like this that we should have a well, so they can get a source of water always without any need of getting water from outside the house. Also, there is a special place for squeezing like oil inside the house, a place for the cattle. There is an open place for the servants as well, beside special rooms for the visitors who comes to the house like every short time period.
But artistic beauty of Islamic monuments is not limited to mosques only. It also includes houses and palaces side by side with fortresses and architectural constructions. El Sahimi House is one of the prominent houses in Cairo that dates back to the 18th century and is regarded as a perfect example for the style of decoration and designing at that time. Its entrance is even amazing. It makes one feel as if it is a time machine. One of the most interesting things or features of this house is the mashrabiyya, one of the beautiful designs of that age. To Western eyes, there was always a magic to the mashrabiyyas, those handsome wooden screens that once masked the exteriors of buildings throughout the Arab East. Mashrabiyyas were veils drawn against the outside world, and behind their cold shield of latticework, those inside did recline in shaded privacy, while gazing out at the tumult of the streets below. The facade of a Sahimi house is beautified with some attractive mashrabiyya windows, imparting on the street and some other simple decorations that reflect the spirit of the 16th and 17th century. And this is the first attractive part. The interior plan of this house includes some parts that were dedicated only to women, known as haramlik, and others for men, known as salamlik. The main portal of this house is followed by a vast open courtyard with a fountain in its center. And the courtyard was annexed with an area with nice seats where men were gathering for negotiating work affairs and if there is no stranger, women were allowed to join the men. The second floor of the house was enclosing a loggia or central hall with huge windows and a nice open dome for ventilation and illumination, also designed in a way that reflects the impact of the Mamluk style on the Ottoman one. Mamluk sultans and emirs were known for their jealous patronage of art and architecture throughout the Mamluk period. Their projects could include a single mausoleum or a small charitable building, while their larger architectural complexes typically combine many functions into one or more buildings. And these could include charitable functions and social services, such as a mosque, a hospital, a school, or a sabil, which is a place for dispensing water to the local population, or a commercial functions, such as wikala or khan, which is a caravanserai to house merchants and their goods. These buildings and their institutions were protected by Waqf agreements, which rendered them the status of charitable endowments or trusts, which were legally inalienable in Islamic law. This allowed the Sultan's legacy to be assured through architectural projects, and his tomb, and potentially the tombs of his family, was typically placed in a mausoleum attached to his religious complex. Worth admiration in this part is the hall, the beautiful polychrome inlays and marble patterns that were usually used for decorating houses and mosques alike in this period. In addition to that, the courtyard with its high ceiling was ornamented with attractive brassworks that highlight the magnificent style of decoration of the medieval Islamic period. The Haramlik of el-Sahimi house, like most of the houses of the wealthy people, was annexed to bath area since middle-class members were usually using the public baths. Of special note in this part of the house are the luxuriously decorated ceiling, windows of stained glass and lattice wooden works ornamenting the corners of the Haramlik. In addition to the Haramlik and the central courtyard, there are some richly decorated private rooms for women. And within the garden enclosure to the house, one can find a well, storerooms, and a flour mill that were usually attached to the houses of the wealthy people. Worth mentioning thing is that the Sehemi house is used as a museum and a center for cultural meetings nowadays.
With this, we come to the end of our backpack for today. Thank you all for joining us. Next time we will be back and tell you more about Egypt. Always consider Backpack your tour guide to learn more about Egypt. And again, always remember Egypt is the cradle of all civilizations.